Hello everyone and welcome to another Top 5 Records video. We are nearing the end of 2024 and looking back at this year in Audiophile Records, I think we can talk about one of the best, perhaps even the best year in audiophile releases that we have seen thus far. There have been so many releases, so many great releases that looking at this year, I'm going for a top 20 and I'm still leaving out great titles. But without further ado, let's just kick it off with the best audiophile vinyl pressings of 2024. On number 20, I'm going to kick this off with a mobile Fidelity Sound Lab one step. It's the one of Joni Mitchell Blue. Now, this one took me by surprise. Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab have been very much shifting in the quality of their pressings over the last couple of years. The smiley face EQ sometimes bites you, which means that they upper the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies. It may sound disbalanced, but sometimes you get a beautiful pressing. Even one that still has that smiley face EQ. It's this blue. This one has the smiley face equalizing. And I already did a video on my channel about this pressing. I compared it to an original, which is beautiful, warm, mixed by Bernie Grundman. And yet, though that brilliant balance is not present on this album, I do open this list with it. Why? It is because the incredible, stunning amount of detail that you do get. The way Joni Mitchell's voice sounds on this album, recorded in such gorgeous, direct, dry solitude within the 45 RPM groove, and the amount of detail that gives to her voice is something mesmerizing. It truly is. It does mean that her guitar and the piano from time to time are just not as impressive as on the original, but still I want to open this video with it because the presentation of her voice makes me just really like to play this one. It is so intimate. It is so special. I truly, truly love it. At number 20, the Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab release on 45 RPM, mastered by Krieg Wunderlich of Joni Mitchell Blue. At number 19, Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen in its 40th anniversary remaster. And it's remastered by the original mastering engineer, Bob Ludwig. And Bob Ludwig quit working about a year ago, I believe. He retired. So we are looking at the last mastering jobs he has done, and he has done an incredible one with this release. And just beside the sound quality, because I'll get into the sound quality later on, this is one of those 40th anniversary releases that is really well packed. You get cards, you get a booklet, you get a colored vinyl, good sounding colored vinyl. And it's one of those releases that really celebrate the quality of the original. As a matter of fact, this one sounds full, warm, detailed, and it has a legendary punch. I mean, the opening highlight. The opening is just right in your face. And if you compare it to a first European pressing, which was the one that I started off with, this one beats that. Later on this year, when I was in Manhattan, I did find an original American pressing, mastered by Bob Ludwig from Masterdisc. Honestly, it's a tiny bit better, but take into account, this is so close. How often do you find a reissue that comes so close and it has the same spirit? If you want a fresh and new and near mint copy of this album, this is the one to go, easily available, and it is a stunning, stunning presentation that beats so many of the pressings out there with great packaging. The packaging here is definitely better than on the original. So at number 19, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, the 40th anniversary remaster by Bob Ludwig or Robert Ludwig. Is it informal to say Bob? At number 18, the Yes album on 45 RPM by Analogue Productions for Atlantic 75 series. Now, I wasn't really looking forward to this release because I already have a first US George Piros, which sounds pretty good. I already have a UK Red Plum, um, the original mastering, which is one of the most astonishing original 70s prog rock pressings I have here in the house. I mean, that's really one of those records that just punches you in the face. And it has such a crazy, crazy vibe in the high that is just really stunning. This, however, has the detail. The distinct difference between how these instruments sound is just really captivating. A gorgeous, detailed mastering on 2 pieces of vinyl on 45 RPM. This is really something that will grab your attention. Gorgeous, gorgeous pressing. At number 18, the Yes album in the 75 Atlantic series on 45 RPM. At number 17, Otis Redding, Duck of the Bay, the 45 RPM Atlantic 75 series by Analogue Productions. Now, this is an album I've been listening to for quite some time. I started off listening to it digitally. I bought a first German pressing a couple of years ago. I gave that a lot of spins because I really love this album. It was an album that was finished right after he passed away. And usually those albums can be a bit of a Frankenstein. For example, on Sitting on Dock of the Bay, you have this whistle, and they just add the whistle because he didn't finish his vocals in the studio. I don't mind. I love the whistle there. And this record feels complete, feels like a whole. And I think it's one of the best Otis Redding albums. I should actually do a top 5 video on Otis Redding. I love it so much. Now, having listened to this one after all these years of German pressings, I mean, it's so much better. So much more clarity, detail, warmth. It is a stunning audiophile presentation of this record. So many great songs. Yeah. At number 17, Otis Redding, Duck of the Bay by Analogue Productions for the Atlantic 75 series. Going to number 16. And as a matter of fact, this was a very recent add to this video. I've been working on this list for the last couple of months, and I already had a finished list until earlier this week. I was at the Concerto record store in Amsterdam, and there was a signing. I was sitting there with a friend of mine, and we didn't recognize the person who was signing things, and we were doing a coffee, and then we looked, and we saw records of The Sound. And the drummer of The Sound was sitting there just a couple of tables away from us signing these. And another record by The Sound, Jeopardy. I bought this because this one had a sticker. Very simple reason. I bought this because this one had the sticker mastered for vinyl from the original analog tape. So I thought, I might take the risk. And it says it's also mastered on orange vinyl. Now, I've been talking about colored vinyl earlier on with the Born in the USA thing. Some people are convinced that colored vinyl, because they add pigment, how do you say it in English, to the material. Black vinyl also has pigment. So it's just a myth. Colored vinyl can sound just as good as black vinyl. And this one is really astonishing. They did a great mastering job here. It's such a beautiful, bright, detailed representation of this album. I loved the sound so much. With or without the signature, it's really, really good. And it's released by Warner Brothers, Warner Music. So this is really one of those records that I did not see coming. And that's what I love about good quality vinyl pressings. Um, this wasn't marketed as an audiophile release. It just sounds spectacularly good and detailed. So at number 16, From the Lion's Mouth by The Sound, this one year released by Warner Music on from the original analog tapes. And we're gonna go to number 15. Now, it's Shotgun Willie by Willie Nelson, the Analogue Productions 45 RPM in the Atlantic 75 series. A lot of the times when you're talking about audiophile releases, there is this list of the usual suspects. Certain titles that just get released over and over again. And this year we saw so many beautiful, unique titles, especially because of the Atlantic 75 series. Unexpected records that sound stunning. For example, this one, I have been looking for a pressing, actually any pressing of Shotgun Willie for the last couple of years. And coincidentally, in the year of this release, I found one. I did not find any of those in Europe, in the UK. I did not find a Shotgun Willie when I was in the Bay Area in June earlier this year. I really was on the look for country albums because I want to do some more country videos. I love Willie Nelson, and I was specifically looking for this record. Could never find it. About a month ago, I found it in Brooklyn in a record store for $30. Now that one sounds beautiful, like most of these Willie Nelson 70s original pressings do. They sound warm, they sound intimate, and I really, really love them. But they are so tough to find. Now, is this a release that is just interesting because it's good and it's of a scarce title or a rare title? No, because this one is even better than the original. And the original is really good. But this one, I mean, Willie Nelson here sounds somewhat raw, somewhat. He isn't looking for a full polished sound. It's raw, it's intimate, it's detailed, and you can hear it in all its nuance. It's as if he's sitting there playing in the room, and I love the realistic approach. Yet still, because of the intimacy, there is this element of warmth. At least it touches my heart. Opening with Shotgun Willie, then Whiskey River. So many good songs here. I'm so happy they chose this title to release, and in this gorgeous, gorgeous sounding version. At number 15, Willie Nelson Shotgun Willie by Analogue Productions for the Atlantic 75 series. At number 14, now this is also an interesting title, Hootie and the Blowfish, Cracked Rear View by Analogue Productions in the Atlantic 75 series. And actually this is a continuation of the argument I made earlier about Willie Nelson. This is one of those 90s albums that is hard to find if you're not looking for the CD on vinyl, and then given this beautiful treatment mastered by Ryan K. Smith from Sterling Sound on 45 RPM. Detail, power, a great album, brilliant choice, brilliant mastering job. I love it. At number 14, Hootie and the Blowfish, Cracked Rear View in the Atlantic 75 series. Now, the audiophile world often gets these. One of these usual suspects is one that actually got a really good release earlier this year. I'm talking about the mobile Fidelity Sound Lab of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Now, this record has been the focus of a lot of audiophile releases. Why? Because Paul Simon is a known audiophile. Originals of Paul Simon or Simon and Garfunkel sometimes can really sound astonishing. Bridge over troubled water, though all the ingredients are there, never really does. It's often thin. It often lacks the detail that we really long for. Now, I have an original. I have I believe it's Columbia, I believe it's Columbia 2i. That sounds nice and warm, and I really enjoy that. But it still lacks that element of detail that when you hear the sound of Art Garfunkel's voice and the piano, you'd imagine that there'd be more detail to it. This one gives that detail. It doesn't have that warmth, but it really is an answer to my longing. And I've listened to a lot of these pressings. I have a first Dutch pressing that is just very thin. It doesn't sound good. I have a half speed mastered from the early 80s that is just horrible. I'm so happy they did this title, and I really enjoy the sound of this one. At number 13, Bridge Over Troubled Water by Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. At number 12, it's time for some John Coltrane. My favorite things in the Atlantic 75 series by Analogue Productions. Now, I wasn't actually looking forward to this release. I have a second US mono pressing that was released, I believe, even the same year with the same stamp press as the first US mono. And when I have such an old jazz album in a good shape, in an early condition with the original stampers, I'm just really, really happy because there's such a well, it's also a love for vintage. It's also a love for old and just the cardboard and everything. And also the sound, it's good. But the sound of that mono one is nothing compared to what Analogue Productions does here. This is this opens up everything that goes on in that record. The stereo image is just astonishing. The way Coltrane's saxophone sounds is just really, really out there. It's a masterpiece in audiophile recording. I mean, these songs, Richard Rodgers, Oscar Hammerstein, my favorite things. I mean, it's musical. It's also very much jazz the way he does it. Summertime, great song, Summertime. And these recordings are so long that every side just has one song. It's so good. It's so nice. I'm so happy they released this one. At number 12, my favorite things by John Coltrane in the Atlantic 75 series by Analogue Productions. Number 11, the last one before we go into the top 10. Juju by Wayne Shorter, mastered by I know who mastered it. It's the it says it here. Kevin Gray, of course. It's always Kevin Gray with the Blue Note Tone Poet series. Mastered by Kevin Gray. For this wonderful, gorgeous series. I said Blue Note Tone Poet series. It's of course not the Blue Note Tone Poet series. It's the classic vinyl series, which is a lot cheaper than the Blue Note Tone Poet series. Also a beautiful series. But specifically this record, and specifically this title, Juju is one of those albums which is tough to find. I've been looking for it ever since I started collecting Blue Note records, which for now is, I believe, 3 or 4 years. I could never find this pressing, or at least I couldn't find it in a good shape at a decent price. Now it's releasing this series for $30, and you get Kevin Gray mastering from the original tapes. That results in this beautiful rare title in a fairly priced version. You put the needle in the grooves and you experience so much room, such a beautiful stereo image, so much detail, so much clarity. Whenever Kevin Gray gets into the world of masterings done, or masterings recordings done by Rudy Van Gelder, he just really knows how to make it come to live and how this record sounds spectacular. So good that Blue Note does this series in this quality at this price. At 11, the Juju Blue Note Classics. And it's time for the top 10. At number 10, Charles Mingus the Clown in the Atlantic 75 series on 45 RPM by Analogue Productions. Now, I have an original of this. I have an original mono one. And these are not original monos which have a bad reputation, like actually my favorite things mono pressing by John Coltrane doesn't have a very good reputation. Charles Mingus was an audiophile. Charles Mingus had such a specific idea about how his record should sound, how his bass should sound, that was different from the view of, for example, Rudy Van Gelder. So Charles Mingus was notorious for saying, "Keep that man far away from my session." And that is not because one is good and the other is bad. No, they are both brilliant audiophiles, but they have distinct ideas how something should sound. And when you listen to an original mono of this album, you do hear that Charles Mingus knows what he's talking about. Almost all of these original Charles Mingus mono pressings. So again, for me, there was no need to buy this. I actually listened to it because a friend of mine bought it because he thought, you know what, we'll give it a shot and we'll compare it and we'll see which one gets out better. And quite to my surprise, this one got out better than the original mono. It is just brilliant mastering. The overall perspective on all the different frequencies is so good here. The amount of detail that the 45 RPM makes possible is just astonishing. And this record makes us get even closer to the original master of Charles Mingus than I ever held possible. It is a masterpiece. At number 10, at number 10, The Clown by Charles Mingus in the Atlantic 75 series. At number 9, another mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. It is Abraxas. And just as the case with Bridge Over Troubled Water, Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab did a one-step, a very famous one-step years ago. Now that famous one-step is very valuable. It goes for between $1,000 and $2,000 euros if you're ever going to find one. I saw one at the record fair in Brabant just a month ago. Yeah, I'm not going to buy that. I do not have that amount of money. So never am I going to listen to that. But this one, which got released this year, is, well, I can't say because I've listened to the one step, but it's the best way I've heard this album. I have an original US record here that sounds good. The difference between that US one and this one is just stunning. It's all in the detail. It's all in the way that you can finally hear the differences in the instruments, in the distinct sounds, in the distinct qualities. And I'm saying that in a very good manner because a couple of years ago we had this White Album release in which they remixed it and they actually added some, I believe they added reverb to the instruments so you could easier distinct the instruments. So it's a fake definition. That's not the case here. It is just beautiful defining clarity. And that makes for a spectacular sounding pressing. Great, brilliant job by Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab on this Santana Abraxas. At number 9, gonna move into number 8. Now this is something I saw ruined by Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab, also on 45 RPM a couple of years ago. So we really needed a good analog pressing of it. So Analogue Productions did in the 75 series. it is "If I Could Only Remember My Name" by David Crosby. Now, this is a record that I think it should speak for itself. I had a discussion earlier this year about somebody said that the Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young members, apart from Neil Young, did not make it on their own. I said everyone made it on their own. I talked about Stephen Stills, and then he said, "Yeah, but David Crosby." I said, "Have you never heard this album?" And the other said, "Oh no, I haven't." Well, buy the 45 RPM and be astonished because this was a hit. This was a masterpiece, and it sounds so good. And Crosby has such a distinct ear for the human voice, and that is present here. It really, really is a astonishing album. Great record. At number 8. Number 7. Am I gonna pronounce this right? INXS? INXS? Now I know there are a lot of fans of this band, and they're gonna hate me for not being able to pronounce this right. The thing is, this record kick. I'm not gonna try it again, because they're a really big band, but I never really paid attention to them. I bought this album, a European pressing of it, a couple of years ago, and I recognized a lot of the songs, of course, a lot of 80s classics on here. Great songs. I liked the album. I really did, but I never gave it much attention after that. I just liked it. I liked it as a good pop rock record from the 80s. Now, the Atlantic 75 series, 45 RPM. It shreds that first European one. The difference that this mastering does, the punch that is there, the definition, the way these highs sound, the dynamics. It is as if I'm hearing this record for the first time and I'm finally getting the emotional response that this band and this album deserves. The difference between these two pressings for me is day and night. And there might be an element in there that sometimes you have to give a record a couple of spins before it really hits. I'm not sure if that is the case here, because this is just the kind of music. It's so much better when it sounds good. At least for me, it's the case. And now I'm falling in love with it because of this gorgeous, gorgeous pressing. Done in the Analogue Productions, done by Analogue Productions in the Atlantic 75 series, 45 RPM. Get it while you can, because this is just gorgeous. At number 7, at number 6, I'm gonna go for one of the big guns. As a matter of fact, all of these are big guns. Another record that really took me by surprise. At number 6, it is the Analogue Productions UHQR of Gaucho by Steely Dan. Now, I've been talking about this pressing earlier this year because I was so much in love by the sound of the original. The original is mastered by Bob Ludwig, and I found I believe it's a promotional copy or an export copy from the original US. And that is just an astonishing sounding record, and I was so enthusiastic about it. I immediately clicked with that album. The original is so good, so I thought, am I gonna want a UHQR? Yeah, well, wanting, of course, out of curiosity. But I thought, just as with the early ones in the series, Can't Buy a Thrill, it doesn't beat the original for me. So I thought, this is definitely not gonna beat the original for me. Well, it does. It does. This is such a specifically brilliant pressing. I mean, the quality of the final, of course, but the mastering here, the stereo image we get, the detail within that stereo image, and within that detail we get that delicate, smooth, nuanced, warm sound of what Steely Dan was after. And I always thought that warm specific sound really worked well within the way these American masterings of originals worked. The way Rudy van Gelder, he knew while recording what would happen in the mastering, what equalizing, what compromise he had to make. So he changed things in recording wise. I thought that might have been somewhat the same with Steely Dan. Not that they're taking any compromises, but they are that they would have been aware of what it would sound like on the record, because these records are just so full and smooth, the originals. Well, all that full and smoothness is here, but then with detail, with stereo image, with an insane sound quality. Man, is this good. And in most other years, most other top fives of audiophile years, this would have been a number one, because it is just the difference between the original and a good original is just staggering. This is a masterpiece of mastering and pressing. At number six, just at number six, Steely Dan Gaucho, the UHQR by Analogue Productions. So, what's left? Well, some really, really needed records. At number five, Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the Atlantic 75 45 RPM series by Analogue Productions. Now, this is from the stampers that were done by Bernie Grundman for the Classic Records version. And that has always been seen as the best sounding version, which is rather necessary because I have an original American version here. And although that one is even a lot better than, for example, the first UK, and I've been looking in a lot of bad sounding copies because I believe, but of course I'm not a mastering engineer, I wasn't there, I haven't listened to the masters, but I've heard stories that the original recording of it is just not that good, which leads to not always good sounding copies. And even the original US has its flaws. This by far is the best way that I've heard this album. And it is one of those albums that I just want to continue listening to. Great moment in time. Opening with Judy Sweet. Just a stunner of a song. Stunner of an album. And so hard to find in great shape. And then just to reuse the legendary stampers. The legendary mastering by Bernie Grundman for this new series. It makes it also somewhat a collection of looking for sometimes even the best mastering that was done. And I really like that about Analogue Productions. They did it with the Miles Davis kind of blue. They went for the Bernie Grundman mastering done when he could still use the master tape. Just a great idea to go for that. And it works. It works very well with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Love this album. At number five. Number four. Analogue Productions UHQR of Bill Evans' Waltz for Debbie. Now, I never really cared much for this album. I have one. I have a mastering done by Kevin Gray, as a matter of fact, on a single disc. It's good. Of course, it's good. I never really got into Bill Evans until I heard this. And you know what? I'm gonna make this a tie because 3 and 4 for me are of the same quality, are of the same epic definition, and I otherwise would repeat myself. At number 3, also the UHQR of Bill Evans, Sunday at the Village Vanguard. I believe they were even done from the same sessions, these two. It is so stunning. The thing is, I remembered earlier this year, I have it still as an image in my brain when a friend of mine took these over to my place and put them on. And I have some originals of Bill Evans because I really wanted to give it a shot. I never really got into Bill Evans that much. I didn't mind it, but the amount of love that he receives from the fans, I just never could get into it, and I never really understood why. And then when that needle went into these UHQR groups, because we played both one after another, it was as if the room broke open sound wise. The stereo image showed us a band, a recording that had so many details. It's as if you close your eyes, you could point out where who was sitting, and still, it was like the first time I listened to the audiophile pressing of Duke Ellington masterpieces, in which a piano just takes over the room. There are just two boxes in the room, and the piano takes over the room. It spreads out like magic, and that's what happens on these two UHQRs. It's just really stunning. And again, it's stunning as well because where can you find a decent copy of Sunday at the Village Vanguard? These originals are almost impossible to find. Good 80s pressings, like very expensive. A lot of the records out there of this album are wax time, bad CD rips. So an analog pressing at all is just very tough to find. And to get this quality, this shape, it's just incredible. At number 4 and 3, both UHQRs. Sunday at the Village Vanguard and Waltz for Debbie by Bill Evans. For Analogue Productions. Now, number 2. What am I gonna do? This may be my most played audiophile record from this year. I found this in New York after it was already fastly sold out, or I never even did see it in Europe, and I was afraid that I would never find this album because it is one of my favorite albums. But I was still desiring. I was somewhat desiring for more soundwise. I first had a 1980 pressing that blew me away compared to the digital versions I've been listening before that. Then I found a Dutch pressing, first Dutch pressing, very good, very good. I love it, I love it. But looking back now, I something triggered me when I heard that Kevin Ray would do an audiophile remaster, and I wasn't sure because I had such a beautiful early pressing. I was hoping for it to sound more the way I hoped, but I couldn't really. It was much. It was very much a dream. So when I found it, I was very happy. I was very happy, but I was thinking, you gotta accept it if it's not gonna be as good as a first Dutch. Finding a first UK is just very hard. Also, this has the set list of the first US. It's a different set list, track list. It's a different track list, so it is different, and it's than the first UK track list wise. And when I put it on, I was with a friend, and I just wanted to test one song, and we were blown away, really blown away by the detail. The moment you hear the rain, the moment you hear the bell, the church bell, and then the guitar, so much brilliant definition on the guitar, and the drums, how smooth, how tight, how full, how the higher frequencies on the drum sounded, and the bass was really carrying it. And then, as I've never heard the voice of Ozzy Osbourne sound this detailed, this brilliant, staggering, going to the wizard where you hear the harmonica, and we couldn't put this record off. We couldn't put this record off, and ever since, that friend of mine has been coming over every night. We play this because it is just, man, I crave for this pressing. I crave for this pressing more than I've ever heard this album. This is a masterpiece, and it's done by Warner Records in their Rhino series, the Rhino High Fidelity series. What a great job! I hope they'll do the other albums as well. This is a banger. So Why this at 2? Shouldn't this have been at 1 then? Or shouldn't that have been UHQRs by Analog Production number 1? Now I'm gonna give the number 1 spot to an unexpected guest. An unexpected guest, and one that I really wasn't looking forward to. But yet it's there. It's a one step, but it's not a Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab one step. It's an Impex Records one step of Stan Getz and Joao Gilberto's Getz Gilberto. Now, why wasn't I looking forward to this? Well, because this is one of those usual suspects that get so often gets an audiophile treatment. That I have an original of this album, which is it doesn't sound very good. Then there is this Analogue Productions 33 RPM in the acoustic sound series that is just stunning. It's even slightly beaten by the 45 RPM by Analogue Productions, which is even more stunning. Why need anything more? And Impex is a good label. Impex is a very good label. But you're going up against Analogue Productions. Do they make it? Yeah, obviously, because else it wouldn't have been at number 1. I do not understand how it is possible that this sounds so much better. I mean, the Analogue Productions is already an audiophile treat, a jewel, especially if you know what an original sounds like. It's the difference is just staggering. This one has more definition, a better representation of the highs, a better representation of the lows. The stereo image is just bizarre. So much more detail. Impex did the unthinkable, and that's why they are at number 1. So I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.